Did you know your parents could legally sign your name and drain your accounts without you ever knowing? I didn't, until I opened my investment portal and saw account not found. The truth is, if you've ever been hospitalized or temporarily incapacitated, a power of attorney, filed without your full awareness, can give someone total control. That's what happened to me while I was on morphine. I'm not just guessing. I used to work in financial data security at Sinclair Capital. I know how to trace device logins, detect forged signatures, and follow money trails. In this video, I'll show you how to find out who's accessing your accounts, protect your assets during medical emergencies, and file a whistleblower report, even if the offenders are your own family. I have network logs, forged paperwork, and tax returns showing my parents claimed caregiver credits while calling me permanently incapacitated. I turned everything over to the IRS. If you still believe family always has your back, watch this before you sign anything. Because if I hadn't uncovered the truth, I would have lost everything: my savings, my rights, and my future. Before we dive into the story, I'd love to get to know you a little better. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. That way, I can send you a special shout out. Now let's begin our story together. Mom always said money could wait until my legs did. Just focus on healing, she'd whisper, folding my hospital discharge papers as though they were napkins for a Sunday picnic. She used the same sing-song voice this afternoon when she wheeled me down the rehab ramp and into the baked brick light of Tempe in April. The jacarandas were dropping violet petals that stuck to my tires like stamps. Every squeak of the ramp echoed in the quiet neighborhood, and I felt the sound linger on my skin long after the metal stopped vibrating. The ride home is only 7 blocks, but the desert air dries sweat before it can cool you. Mom drove ahead in Dad's truck, windows up, air conditioning on. I pushed along behind in my chair, counting the cracks in the sidewalk and the seconds between breaths. 3 houses from ours I caught up, just in time to see her pluck a white envelope from our mailbox and tuck it under her cardigan. She smiled through the windshield, a quick flash like a camera, then turned away, pretending to rearrange grocery bags. Inside the converted garage apartment Dad built after my accident, everything was exactly where Mom thought it should be. Drawer labels in tidy block letters, socks, chargers, meds, even though I could find those things by feel. The refrigerator had a special shelf with masking tape that read, "Caleb's items only," as if boundaries could be drawn with kitchen supplies. The place smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and eucalyptus lotion, the scent the rehab center uses to convince you pain is just a formality. Dr. Patel's voice still rang in my ears. Small gains are still gains. I tried to believe him while transferring from chair to couch, but the cushions felt lower than yesterday, like someone had quietly removed the support wedges. I glanced around. Nothing looked different, but something felt rearranged, like coming back to a bookmarked page and finding the paragraph indented a new way. Mom stepped in, carrying a paper cup of iced coffee for herself and a bottle of electrolyte water for me. "The mail was mostly junk," she announced, setting the bottle on my labeled shelf. "One bank flyer, a couple of prepaid envelopes. I tossed them." She spoke lightly, yet her shoulders were high, as if holding invisible groceries she couldn't put down. I cleared my throat. "Any statements from Sinclair Capital?" She kept her gaze on the coffee lid. "You mean your old stock account? Oh, honey, we moved that months ago. Better diversification, less risk. Daddy handled all the signatures while you were still on heavy meds. You don't need to chase numbers right now." The words slid across the room and settled in my chest like dust. I remembered a clipboard appearing in the hospital last year, my handwriting wobbling as I tried to sign through a haze of morphine. I'd assumed it was another insurance form. Maybe it wasn't. Dad's boots clomped on the driveway. The sound carried through the thin drywall. He poked his head in, offered a curt nod, and left again. He doesn't linger in the apartment. Says the space is mine, though the light switches are too high and the door locks only from the outside. When night flattened the desert sky, the house lights dimmed except the blue glow of my laptop. I typed Sinclair's web address almost by muscle memory and waded through the security splash screen. Invalid credentials. I checked caps lock, tried the backup password, then reached for the password manager I'd built back when I trusted myself with code. The vault showed my Sinclair login had been updated last month from a desktop registered to Frank's office. My throat tightened. Last accessed 6 days ago. Not me. I opened email recovery, but the prompt demanded confirmation from an unfamiliar phone number. I leaned back, feeling the old couch springs protest. A motor whirred as the garage door of the main house rolled open. Dad's nightly beer run. Another whine, the door shutting, the automatic lock clicking. Sound travels funny at night. It makes small things large. A dusty keyboard can tell you a lot. I brushed grit from the spacebar, remembering late pre-crash nights trading West Coast closings. The numbers felt solid then, little monuments to discipline. Now they were entries in someone else's ledger. Unease turned physical, a small cold coin behind my ribs. I rummaged through the bottom drawer where Mom stores important papers she says overwhelm me. Bills clipped together, receipts, a church bulletin. At the very back lay a folded photocopy, grainy, crooked. Transfer of assets. Section 3. Full authority granted to custodians Linda and Frank Morgan. My name sat beside a date I barely remember, the signature slick and confident. I traced the curve of the C in Caleb. It looked like mine if you squinted, but the pressure was wrong, too steady for a man on fentanyl. I set the sheet on the desk and turned on the bedside lamp. The yellow light made the paper seem older, like evidence in a cold case box. Outside the open window, a freight train howled across town, its horn stretching longer than the tracks themselves. For a moment, I thought about calling Mom in, asking her to explain. But the house was dark now. Curtains pulled. Their day was over. Mine was just rounding the bend. I slid the copy into a new folder, labeled it with today's date, and placed it atop the drawer. The adhesive on the label stuck to my thumb longer than usual, a tiny resistance that felt like proof gravity still worked on my side. Somewhere in the main house, a refrigerator motor kicked on, a deep, humming note that seemed to say, "Stay cold, stay quiet." I listened until the sound faded. Then I opened a blank document and titled it, Things I Need to Know Before Morning. At the top of the list, I typed, what else did I sign? The cursor blinked, patient as a nurse during a midnight vitals check. Outside, wind rustled the lemon tree by the fence, and jacaranda petals drifted in swirls, purple against the street lamp glow. Spring in Arizona always looks gentle. You have to live here to know how hot it's about to get. Mom's footsteps reached my door before her knock. "Dinner's ready," she announced through the wood. No question, just the statement of a fact, like sunrise or property tax. I closed the laptop on my growing folder of evidence and wheeled toward the ramp that linked my garage apartment to the main house. Halfway up, the faint whir of Dad's lawnmower drifted in from next door. The smell of cut Bermuda grass mixed with roast chicken, a fragrance so familiar it felt rehearsed. The dining room looked untouched by time. Mismatched plates from 2 different bridal showers, yellowed wallpaper sprigged with faded violets, and the wall-mounted TV tuned to local news. My place sat at the narrow end of the table, closest to the hallway, the same seat they gave me at 6 years old so I wouldn't bump elbows. Tonight, the chair was angled toward the television, not the window. From there, I could watch, but never be watched. Mom slid a plate in front of me, skinless chicken thigh, half cup of broccoli, potatoes mashed without butter. "Good protein," she chirped, tapping my fork, a standard restaurant model that still felt oversized in my hand. Last fall, she'd boxed up my adaptive utensils for donation. "Real men don't need baby tools," she'd said, smiling in that half-apology way she uses when rearranging my life. Uncle Rob occupied Dad's usual spot, shoulders broader than the ladder-back chair could kindly hold. He came by once a month to check on the situation, though he never defined what that meant. Dad stood at the head, carving knife poised, sermon ready. Mom filled water tumblers, never asking if anyone wanted iced tea. Rob glanced at me, oblivious. Heard your folks got the money side handled. Must be a load off your mind. A piece of chicken lodged in my throat. I swallowed twice before speaking. Which money side is that, Uncle? Rob, fork halfway up, looked from me to Mom in confusion. Your investments, son. Great that Linda and Frank keep those headaches away so you can focus on healing. Mom answered for me. Caleb's portfolio needed shelter from this market storm. She dabbed the corner of her mouth with a napkin. Stability first, spreadsheets later. Dad carved with authority. Long strokes, no wasted motion. Inflation's eating everyone alive, he announced. Under this administration, money evaporates. Safer under our roof than in those Wall Street casinos. The TV muttered through a segment on rising gas prices. Volume low, but excuses handy. I pushed my plate back. I'd still like an update. Can we review last quarter's statement after dinner? Mom's smile tightened. Honey, you couldn't keep your eyes open at therapy this morning. Numbers will just exhaust you. I let the silence sit there, heavy as an iron skillet. Dad cleared his throat. Let's say grace. It was less invitation than order. While he mumbled the blessing, I pictured the Sinclair login screen flashing red. Account not found. The memory made the broccoli taste of metal. After dessert, sugar-free gelatin for me, peach cobbler for everyone else, I excused myself to use the hall printer. In Dad's office, the air smelled of motor oil and printed toner, the scents of his two faiths. Stacked neatly on the credenza lay a single manila folder labeled Caleb Taxes 2023. I lifted it. The weight told me photocopies, not originals. Back in the dining room, Mom was recounting my childhood spelling bee victory to Rob, a story she tells when conversation lulls. I slid the return onto the table between the gravy boat and the salt shaker. Dad's jaw flexed. That's private paperwork. It lists me as a dependent, I said, steady as I could. Line 11B shows 0 capital gains. Where did a $210,000 portfolio disappear? Rob set his fork down, suddenly invested in more than chicken. Mom's fingers fluttered at her collar. We reinvested. Into what? A mattress? Dad's voice lowered. Watch your tone. I flipped to Schedule 3. Caregiver tax credits for both of you. My thumb pressed the figure. Did you claim $4,800 because you helped me reach the top shelf? The room held its breath. From outside, the neighbor's mower sputtered off, leaving only the hum of the refrigerator. Mom spoke first, each syllable wrapped in cotton. Caleb, finances are fragile right now. You need security, not volatility. Let us carry that weight. I'm not helpless, I said, hearing the echo of that same line months earlier, just before she canceled therapy. Because I seemed tired. Dad gathered plates, stacking them harder than necessary. You think you can outsmart inflation, politics, the market crash? Your mother and I, we've kept this house running. What you call your portfolio, we call our retirement backup. A laugh escaped me, sharp and accidental. Backup implies permission. Rob pushed away from the table. Maybe I should head out. No, stay, I told him, eyes still on Mom. Good to have a witness. Dad's chair scraped the tile. Don't pull legal nonsense at the dinner table. Fine. We'll step into the living room, I said, folding the return and slipping it into my jacket. Plenty of seating there. My wheels turned, squeaking on linoleum. I could feel their eyes following the sound. At the threshold, I paused, looking back at the plate Mom had portioned for me. Half-eaten, already cooling, it reminded me of the yard stakes Dad uses to mark sprinkler heads. Prescribed nourishment, flagged and measured. I rolled into the hallway, heart drumming like a loose belt on Dad's mower. Behind me, Mom whispered, "He's too worked up for his own good." Dad answered something low, words I couldn't catch. What I did hear was the rustle of paper as he gathered the manila folder. In the living room light, I opened the return again. Caregiver credits highlighted in pale blue, dependent box checked. Capital gains vanished. At the bottom, Dad's firm signature, Mom's looping cosign. Mine appeared nowhere. I slipped the pages into my satchel, the zipper teeth snapping shut like a verdict, and waited. The hallway air felt thick as simmering gravy. Every labeled drawer, every taped shelf in this house whispered the same message. We decide. Somewhere down the street, the mower restarted, blades chewing daylight into smaller pieces. Mom's voice rose, pleading and muffled. Dad answered with a flat command, their words blurred into the hum of an old refrigerator that never seemed to rest. And I thought, for the first time in years, maybe neither should I. The desert wind pressed a warm palm against the cracked window, rattling the loose latch like a quiet dare. Midnight found me in the blue glare of 2 monitors. Childhood trophies pushed aside to make room for spreadsheets, log files, and a stack of folders fatter than Mom's Sunday paper. Somewhere beyond my door, the main house slept under a roof paid for with my benefits. In here, sleep had been postponed. My old work motto scrolled through my thoughts, the way ticker tape once glided across my screen at Sinclair Capital. If something doesn't add up, it probably isn't supposed to. I breathed in, steadying my hands, and opened the router logs I'd pulled from Dad's office earlier that evening. The IP addresses stared back, trios of numbers I knew better than phone contacts. Each showed a recent login to the brokerage portal. Each belonged to a device registered in my parents' names. Click, copy, paste, evidence packet page 1. Next, I attacked the document folder Mom kept in her linen closet behind spare hand towels and expired coupons. I'd scanned everything. A power of attorney filed 8 months after my accident, a neat form with my shaky signature smoothed into perfect penmanship. The date landed squarely in the week I'd spent drifting through morphine fog, asking nurses whether daylight was real or remembered. I zoomed in on the signature. My name curled with a flourish I've never used. Whoever forged it wanted me to appear confident, maybe even grateful. Trust mismanagement, I typed in my notes. Unauthorized transfer. Fiduciary breach. The words felt crisp, almost professional. Home turf at last. The laptop chimed. Incoming video request. Rachel Kim's face appeared, framed by the muted glow of her apartment in Phoenix. We hadn't spoken in months, not since I bowed out of a contract we once planned to pitch together. Her hair was piled high in a loose knot, compliance manuals stacked at her elbow. "You said urgent," she began. "I figured you weren't calling to reminisce." I shared my screen. Router logs, forged POA, the blank spots where quarterly statements should live. Rachel watched in practiced silence, her brows knitting when the fake signature flashed by. "This is messy," she said at last, "and that's me being polite." "Borderline criminal?" "Cross the border," she answered. "If they used this document to move assets, they committed fraud. And if they claimed caregiver credits on top of that, they did." She exhaled through her nose, a soft whistle of disbelief. "Then we're looking at tax evasion, too. Have you considered the fallout?" I thought of Mom's labeled drawers, Dad's sermon about inflation, Uncle Rob's clueless smile. I pictured the blank line where my gains should have been, the dependent box checked without my consent. Fallout already lived in this house. I was just giving it a name. "I've started a file," I said. The webcam showed the red folder on my bed, a stray beam of moonlight touching the tab like a spotlight. Rachel's voice softened. "You understand, if you report, the IRS won't treat them like parents. They'll treat them like perpetrators." "I know. And once that wheel turns, it doesn't stop for family dinners." I nodded. Outside, a distant freight train moaned across the valley floor, a long metallic sigh. "They already chose their dinner menu," I said. "They served control. I'm choosing the check." A ping interrupted us, an automated chat bubble from the IRS whistleblower portal reminding inactive users to complete submissions within 30 minutes. The cursor blinked on the half-filled form. Describe parties involved. Rachel caught the reflection in my glasses. "Caleb," she warned. Pressing send means subpoenas, asset freezes, maybe criminal court. I kept my gaze on the screen. Mom always said truth sets you free, I murmured. She just never mentioned how much paperwork it takes. Across the room, the mechanical ramp groaned as it settled, metal cooling in the night air. The sound grounded me, a reminder that my mobility was still partly a gift of engineering and insurance. That insurance was bought with earnings now siphoned away. "I'll back you up," Rachel said. "If investigators need a compliance statement, I'm in." I swallowed the tightness in my throat. Appreciated. The word felt small for the weight of her offer. The IRS chatbot flashed again, this time asking if I needed assistance. I typed no and dismissed the window. Then I reviewed the attachments: screenshots, network logs, PDF scans, comparative signature analyses, every breadcrumb a story my parents never meant to tell. Rachel's image flickered as she muted her mic to sip coffee. She unmuted. Last chance to sleep on it. Sleep, I almost laughed, was a relic. I hovered over Submit Report. The button glowed steady, patient, like a porch light waiting for a prodigal son. Funny thing about porch lights, they guide you home, but they also expose whoever's at the door. Rachel broke the silence. "If this gets reported, your parents could face real charges. Are you ready for that?" My finger twitched. The train's horn echoed again, fading into night, and I imagined the rails stretching toward whatever came next, straight, unbending, honest in their direction. "I wasn't," I said, voice low but sure. "But I am now." I clicked. The screen faded to black for a breath, then a confirmation number appeared, stark and undeniable. Somewhere in the dark house, a water pipe clanged, as though the walls felt the shift. The cursor rested at the bottom of the receipt, blinking like a metronome, counting down the seconds before morning would arrive with new rules. I wheeled through the double-glass doors of the Tempe Public Library just after opening. The air conditioning hit like a wave from another season, banishing the desert warmth still clinging to my shirt. In the far corner, past a row of biographies, no one seems to check out anymore. A study table waited under the hush of fluorescent bulbs. I spread out my tools: a worn yellow legal pad, a portable scanner the size of a loaf of bread, and a flash drive painted bright red so it couldn't disappear by accident. The laptop hummed awake. On screen, folders bloomed. Reuter logs forged POA. Tax return 2023. Sinclair transfers. Each felt colder than the last. Mom and Dad had taken more than principal and profit. They'd drafted a new identity for me: dependent, incapable, permanently seated. I intended to strike those words from the record. The scanner clicked rhythmically while I fed it copies of every document in my satchel. A librarian glided past, offering a neutral smile that said these walls kept more secrets than mine. I labeled each PDF with the precision of a surgeon. Exhibit, a 1_ fake signature, Exhibit B3_ device log. My good hand moved faster than it had in months. The tremor that bothered me after long therapy sessions was quiet now, as if purpose steadied the muscles. While files uploaded to encrypted storage, I scribbled a timeline on the legal pad. January 2020, accident, March 2020, first transfer, October 2021, false power of attorney filed, April 2024, account locked. The dates lined up like dominoes begging for the first flick. Mid-morning sunlight slanted across the carpet, painting stripes that crawled toward my tires. I paused, remembering a family barbecue 3 summers ago, when Mom had passed me a soda and said, "Don't worry about the accounts, you've got enough on your plate." At the time, I'd taken the words as comfort. Now they felt like the preamble to a long con. My phone buzzed. Rachel. Lobby badge ready whenever you are. R. I packed the scanner, shut the lid on the laptop, and slid the red flash drive into my pocket. The rideshare dropped me an hour later at a downtown Phoenix tower clad in mirrored glass. Inside, the lobby smelled of polished stone and restrained ambition. Rachel met me by the security desk, her ID clipped to a blazer that made weekend jeans look official. She led me past frosted doors into a conference nook the size of Mom's pantry. We spread the papers again, but now under track lighting that left nowhere for ink to hide. Rachel paged through each sheet, her finger pausing on the forged signature. "The curvature here is identical to the notary's handwriting," she noted. "Classic copy and trace. Amateur, but enough to fool back-office staff." "What about criminal exposure?" "Unauthorized asset liquidation, identity misuse, tax misrepresentation." She listed the charges like groceries. Any one of those triggers an IRS fraud referral. Combined, they're dynamite. We logged into the whistleblower portal together. The interface asked for parties, dates, amounts. I thought about Dad mowing straight lines across the yard, about Mom relabeling cupboards while humming hymns. The keys clicked on their behalf. Franklin J. Morgan, Linda S. Morgan, names I'd written on birthday cards and college loan references. When the upload prompt appeared, I inserted the red drive. Files poured in like water, finding its level. At the final step, the portal offered a choice: reveal identity to investigators or remain anonymous. I chose disclosure. If truth needs a face, it might as well be the one they raised. Rachel printed 2 hard copies of the submission packet. One went into a fireproof safe behind her desk. The other she slid into a courier envelope sealed and wrote on the front in block letters, "To be opened only by federal investigators." She handed me a smaller envelope. "Insurance policy," she said. Inside lay a single sheet on firm letterhead, her compliance statement attesting to the document's authenticity. At the bottom, she had added in blue ink, "If anything happens to Caleb Morgan, release contents immediately." I managed a tight smile. "Thanks feels thin." "Keep it anyway," she replied. The elevator down was glass on one side. Phoenix afternoon shimmered beyond, heat swirls rising from roofs like invisible flames. My phone vibrated. Rachel again, though she stood 12 floors above. "You've built a solid case. This won't go quietly." A reflection of my face stared back from the glass, sharper than it looked a month ago. The lines of worry hadn't vanished, but they were no longer the only story my skin told. Back in Tempe, the sun was lowering, painting the street a dusty bronze. I rolled up the ramp to my apartment, shoulders surprisingly steady. Each push felt cleaner, as if muscles finally believed they served me, not the chair. The door swung open on squeaky hinges Dad promised to oil last fall. Evening air smelled of lemon cleaner, but another scent floated beneath it, paper dust and ink. On the counter sat a thick white envelope addressed in Mom's looping script. "Trust adjustments, for review only." No stamp, no courier tag. They'd been inside while I was gone. A thin arrow of anger lodged behind my ribs. Still, I steadied my hands, slit the envelope, and let the papers slide onto the counter like cards from a rigged deck. First page: revised distribution schedule, appointing Linda and Frank as co-trustees until such time as beneficiary regains full capacity. Every paragraph dripped with concern. Every clause tightened the leash. At the bottom, a space reserved for my consent, blank but highlighted in yellow. I thumbed the packet shut and leaned back, feeling the ramp creak under the shift of weight. A reminder of physics, of support that obeys laws my parents can't rewrite. Outside, wind stirred the jacaranda again, violet petals drifting across the porch like small, stubborn witnesses. Evidence no longer lived in theory. It sat in safes, in servers, and now in my kitchen. No matter what fresh documents my parents drafted, their signatures were already chasing mine, not leading. I tucked the envelope beside the red flash drive, locked both in my own fireproof box, and set the key on the high shelf labeled "Caleb's Items Only." For once, the label felt accurate. The living room felt smaller, with the blinds half drawn, as though the house itself braced for what was coming. Dad had muted the television, but the soft cadence of Antiques Roadshow still flickered across the screen. China teacups appraised, heirlooms discussed, everyone hunting for value in things left behind. I eased my chair onto the rug and set the leather folder on the coffee table. The folder landed without a sound, but both of my parents flinched. "I filed the report," I said. "If you've got anything left to say, now's the time." Mom's hands instinctively reached for each other, knitting and unknitting in her lap. Dad remained standing, arms crossed, blocking the hallway as if he could hold back an audit with posture alone. No one spoke, so I opened the folder. The pages slid out in crisp stacks, bank statements, device logs, scanned signatures. Even the light from the TV seemed to dim around them. I fanned each document across the table the way Dr. Patel fans therapy bands before a session. No confusion about what muscle we're working today. "When I was 10, I began, I asked you, Dad, why people lie. You told me because the truth makes them look small. I remember thinking that was sad. I tapped the forged power of attorney. Now I think it's worse than sad." Mom drew a ragged breath. "Caleb, you thought I couldn't handle it." I finished the sentence for her, sliding the next sheet forward. "So you created a reality where I didn't have to. Only problem is, that reality required you to be me." Her eyes shone, but the tears held, suspended like dew. "We managed the money to spare you stress. Healing takes strength." Dad's voice cut in, low and solid. "You were never going to make it on your own. The market's brutal. Bills pile up. Somebody had to protect what you built before you destroyed it." "By liquidating accounts without my consent?" I flipped a page. The brokerage transfer dated April 2020. "By listing me as a dependent so you could claim caregiver credits? By describing me as permanently incapacitated in tax filings?" Dad bristled. "That's the language the form required." "It's also perjury," I said, letting the words settle. "The IRS call center confirmed this morning that an audit has been opened. They'll request restitution plus penalties. They'll dig through every receipt, vacations, renovations, whatever you bought with money tagged for my future." Mom's hands finally stilled. "You went to the government." "I gave you the weekend to come clean," I said quietly. "You didn't. Now it's out of my hands." Silence pressed in. The only movement came from the TV, a close-up of someone's delicate porcelain bird. The appraiser pointed out a hairline crack, value lost in a flaw no one noticed until it was under bright lights. Mom's tears broke free. "We loved you through all of it," she said, voice trembling. "Every hospital night, every therapy session. Your father refinished this room so you could get in without bumping thresholds. We did what we thought was right." "Love doesn't hide mail," I replied, "and it doesn't cash in the person it claims to protect." Dad's jaw worked as if words were stones he had to chew before spitting out. "You think a government agency will treat you better than your own parents? You think this makes you a hero?" He stepped forward and slapped a palm against the coffee table. The jolt rocked my evidence piles, a few pages sliding out of alignment. One sheet fluttered to the floor, my 2023 return, the dependency box neatly checked. I reached down, retrieved the paper, and squared the corners again. The steadiness of my hands surprised even me. "I'm not looking for heroes," I said. "Just accountability." Dad exhaled through his nose, half laugh, half snort. "You'd rather see your family ruined than admit you needed help." I needed honesty, not guardianship. I closed the folder and latched it. "There's still room for your side of the story, just not here at this table. Investigators will contact you soon. I suggest you answer them." Mom's shoulders shook, her gaze darting from my face to the silent TV and back. "Please," she whispered, "let's handle this privately." "Private ended when you signed my name." A car passed outside, its headlights stroking the blinds, stripes of light and dark racing across Dad's stern profile. He straightened, as if a decision clicked into place. In one swift motion, he swept his arm across the table, knocking the folder to the floor. Papers fanned like startled birds, fluttering before settling face down on the rug. The old coffee table, scarred by years of hot dishes and holiday game boards, rattled under the blow. Dad loomed over the mess, breathing hard. "You think this makes you a hero?" he repeated, voice gravel rough. "Fine, be the hero. Just remember, heroes don't always survive their own stories." "Dear friend, what would you do if you were in my shoes? I bet you can't guess what's coming next. But before we go any further, drop a 5 in the comments if you're still with me, because what happens next might just leave you speechless." His words hung in the room, heavier than the lamp's dusty shade, heavier than any threat I'd imagined. I pivoted my chair, gathering the scattered sheets one by one. Each page returned to order with a soft rustle that felt louder than his outburst. Mom stepped back, bumping the TV stand. The muted appraiser lifted the porcelain bird as if in silent toast to fragile things. I slid the last document into place and lifted the folder onto my lap. "The next time we talk," I said, "it will be with someone recording." My hands moved the wheels and the chair turned toward the hall. Behind me, the blinds quivered from the draft, casting stuttering bars of light across the carpet, like prison shadows, except the bars were moving, shifting from them to me and back again. I kept rolling steady, the folder safe against my chest. Dad's final words chased me down the hallway but didn't land. Outside, evening air cooled my cheeks. Somewhere in the dark, a sprinkler clicked on, and water arced over the lawn in precise, wasteful circles. The stars were late, but they would come. I followed the ramp down, each rotation sure, each breath a little freer, knowing the weight of truth was finally on record, even if the cost had only begun to show. Justice didn't come in handcuffs. It arrived as a certified email from the Treasury Department, 2 lines long. Accounts frozen, subpoenas issued. After that, the Morgan house fell quiet in a way no holiday argument ever could. I didn't need to explain the silence to anyone. It explained itself each time a dollar failed to clear. My new studio sat 3 miles from their front lawn but felt farther, partly because I chose every inch of it. White walls, 2 big windows, sunlight pooling on bare floors. The mattress still wore its plastic sleeve, the faint crinkle reminding me it hadn't absorbed anyone else's weight or worries. Boxes labeled mine leaned in a corner. Books, kitchen, off-season clothes. I'd paid the movers from a checking account that listed one name only. When the final receipt pinged my phone, it felt like an invisible padlock clicking shut behind me. Mid-afternoon, I assembled a metal desk bought on clearance. The instructions were wrong in 2 places, yet the pieces still fit once I trusted my eye instead of the printed diagram. A small lesson tucked into an Allen wrench. With the desk standing, I opened my laptop and dialed Rachel. She appeared under a patio umbrella outside her office, steam rising from an iced tea glass. "Ready to start fresh?" she asked. I nodded and shared my screen. Together, we built a new investment profile. 2 index funds, a modest bond ladder, nothing my parents would recognize. Rachel generated a 12-word security phrase and made me write it twice, pen on paper, as permanent as ink allows. "Last step," she said, "enable biometric login." The fingerprint reader glowed. I placed my index finger and the machine captured the swirl and ridge no one else could forge. A green check mark bloomed on screen. Simple. Unarguable, mine. Evening settled while I sorted the last box. Near the bottom, I found a photo Dr. Patel had taken months after the crash. Me balancing between parallel bars, sweat on my brow, half a smile on my lips. I'd kept it because the smile was real, a small victory nobody scripted. I placed the photo in a black frame and hung it above the desk. The nail went in crooked, but the picture held. A soft thud at the door broke the quiet. The hallway outside smelled of fresh paint and someone else's dinner. On the floor lay a thick envelope addressed in Mom's looping script. I carried it inside but didn't open it. Through the paper, I could feel more words than I cared to count, words asking to stay a family, to remember Sunday dinners, to let love override audits and affidavits. I slid the envelope into a drawer I hadn't labeled yet and closed it gently. Boundaries make less noise than arguments. The next morning, Rachel met me at a corner cafe shaded by orange umbrellas. We talked about ordinary things, her upcoming race, my hunt for a used bookshelf, how desert heat settles into the bones of old adobe walls. The iced tea glasses left damp rings on the table, brief halos evaporating before a second glance. She asked if I'd heard anything new. I told her the investigation was moving forward, but I'd stepped aside. The evidence spoke louder than I ever could. On my way home, I passed a rental duplex with a for lease sign and remembered Dad evicting my cousin years ago. "Business is business," he declared, turning the latch with finality. Back then, the lesson stung. Now it simply framed the day. Sometimes business is boundaries. Back in the studio, sunlight crawled across the floor, touching the still-wrapped mattress, the unread envelope, the photo on the wall. I followed the beam with my wheels until it warmed my knees. The quiet wasn't empty. It was spacious, like a room finally cleared of furniture that never fit. I looked at the framed picture, at the half-smile stubborn against gravity, and realized strength is often the part no one photographs. The moment after the camera clicks, when you decide what happens next. For the first time in years, I wasn't surviving. I was living, on my own terms. Some silences feel like loss. This one felt like peace. Not every family story ends with reconciliation, but some end with clarity, and that's its own kind of healing. Sometimes the hardest part isn't speaking up. It's letting go of the need to be understood by those who hurt you. In this life, setting boundaries isn't unkind. It's how we remember our worth when others forget. If this story resonated with something you've lived through, I'd be honored to hear your thoughts. You're not alone, and your voice matters too. And if this story touched your heart, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more stories about resilience and hope. Thanks for watching.